Hello and welcome again. We're thrilled to have you guys all join us today for the next session in our 2024 to 2025 InterReach Community of Practice webinar series, which is entitled Intentional Integration, How Do We Know If It's Working? So my name is Christine Glauber. I am an InterReach co-chair, along with my wonderful colleague, Amalia Turner. Amalia, do you want to say hi again?
Hi, everyone. I'm Amalia Turner, also at Duke University in the CTS site here. Welcome.
And our other co-chair, Christine Hendren, is not able to be here today. She is, oh, wait, actually, she is here. So, but we'll get started and she can introduce herself in a minute. So, as a community, we've spent a lot of time discussing career paths, facilitation methods, and tools for integrating across boundaries. And now we're excited to dive deeper into a critical question, which is how do we assess and improve the outcomes of the boundary spanning methods that we champion in team science? We know that interdisciplinary work takes effort, and today we're going to continue the exploration of whether those efforts are achieving their intended impact. Before we dive into today's session, a few quick housekeeping notes. We encourage you to use the chat to ask any questions and share your thoughts throughout today's presentation. And I know our speaker is going to be able to pause and answer those questions from time to time. There will be a couple of opportunities for engagement, so including a potential breakout room session. And so hopefully you guys are able to turn on your video for those sessions. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end of the session. And then I also just want to mention that our next session will be on November 12th, and the title of their session is Wicked Problems and Wicked Challenges, Measuring Convergence in Graduate Education. So stay tuned for that, and there will be more information coming to you via the listserv as we get closer to that session. So without further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Rebecca Woodland, who is our speaker for today. She is a professor of education policy and leadership at UMass Amherst and director of program evaluation at the UMass Center for Educational Assessment. And I'll also just say that she's got a little bit further down, but I'll also add that she's our
Wait,
vice
I don't know.
president of Insight.
I don't know why I'm sharing right now. I'm trying to stop the share.
Oh no, I'm not seeing it shared.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no
Sorry.
worries. No, you're good. So yeah, Dr. Woodland works to cultivate conditions for inclusive, robust, productive, and fun interorganizational collaboration and team-based inquiry. Her work includes the collaboration evaluation improvement framework. That's a little bit of a tongue twister. And Amali's going to put a link to that article in the chat, which offers guidelines for measuring organizational integration and quality of team collaboration. Currently, Dr. Woodland is examining the quality and effects of teamwork in an NSF-sponsored research practice partnership that supports the design and diffusion of culturally responsive computer science instructional innovations. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Woodland.
Hello, welcome everybody. Am I sharing a screen that you can see?
Yes, but it looks like your email.
It looks like my email, of course. So let's stop the share and go choose something else to share. Unless anybody would like to. Unless anybody would like to
answer your emails for you.
How about that? How about that? Can we see that?
Yes.
Yay. Okay. Well,
that looks like your slides.
Okay, good. I'm glad. All right. Well, it's just a total pleasure to be here. Thank you for Christine, Amelia for monitoring the chat and so forth. But okay, so I was excited to be here today with you all, and I am very interested in the system factors that can supercharge or sabotage team science. And I am curious about what lights your fire about team science and collaboration. So could we, in the chat right now, could you just briefly share something that lights your fire about team science and collaboration? Just a brief blurb. Well, what gets you fired up about this topic? So I have a sense of what folks are thinking about. Yeah, Stephen, I didn't know you were here. Yes, let's solve the world's problems. Ah, yes, not having to be expert in everything. Yes, creativity, challenge, reflexivity, amazing things that happen when we come together. Awesome. Different methods of problem solving. That's wonderful. Okay, great. Well, I wanted to briefly share what fires me up. And I wanted to start with this safe schools, healthy students. Yes, and keep putting them down. Those of you that are still coming in, breaking down barriers. That's great. So the Safe Schools, Healthy Students Initiative, when I was doing my PhD, that was not long after the school shooting in Columbine High School. And this new initiative was started with collaboration between the Department of Justice, Health and Human Services, and Education called Safe Schools, Healthy Students. And I was the evaluator on it. And I was supposed to evaluate this. And the very first meeting of all the partners, which brought together people from all different types of expertise and different parts of the community to a table. And there were about 20, 25 people around the table. And the first goal of their grant, very $6.35 million grant, the very first goal was to, and this is a quote, to create a seamless community-wide, a seamless infrastructure of community-wide partnerships predicated on high-quality collaboration. How many words are in there? Seamless infrastructure of community-wide partnerships predicated on high-quality collaboration. Who doesn't want collaboration? Who doesn't want partnerships? Who doesn't want seamless infrastructures? And I looked around the table at these 25 people or so, and I said, great. So what is a seamless infrastructure? What's community-wide? What are partnerships? What's high-quality collaboration? And then it was silent. And they said, well, you're the evaluator. You're the researcher. You're supposed to know that. I'm like, oh. So, and that's when I was doing my PhD. That was 25 years ago. And I, since then, have been very invested in trying to figure out this messy thing called teaming, partnerships, collaboration. More recently, in the last 5 years, I've been working with the visual at the lower right, Schmidt Science Fellows. And I don't know if anybody has heard of them, the Schmidt Science Fellows program, but basically they sponsor fellows in prestigious laboratories around the world with PIs who have big labs and who run teams, science teams, team science. And they're predicated on doing interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary work. So they'll take computer science, PhD, postdocs, and put them in a biology lab. And they fund postdocs for 2 years with $200,000. And it's an amazing program, Schmidt Science Fellows. And I was their evaluator. And so I've had the chance to interview 22 premier scientists, 14 of which are Nobel Prize winners, about what does interdisciplinary science mean to you? What's transdisciplinary science? What's teaming? And there was no consensus. And there was lots of feelings of like, I'm not sure if it's valuable. Other people are like, it's so valuable, but I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. I don't know how best to support it. So that also got me very fired up. Like if these folks running the labs aren't sure, what does this mean and what can I do? So let me just start with some terms. And these terms, at least for me, just kind of help set the stage for what I'm talking about and maybe what you're thinking about. There are different types of teams when we talk about teams and team science. And I adapted this from, you can see the citation right here, but just the idea that there are teams made up of people all coming from the same place. There are multidisciplinary teams where people work independently and then come together. There's interdisciplinary teams, which people are different, but they're working jointly together on a shared thing. And transdisciplinary teams, which is putting together a whole new framework or a whole new unified theory to address issues. And then in the purple box, you can see there's different types of research that might get done, scientific research, basic, clinical, translational. So these are all at play. And some of you might be working on really big science projects or engage with large groups, 200, 500 people working around the world. Others may be a single team, and there can be combinations of these different teams. So I really care about the system factors that set team science up for success, as do all of you. And I I care about that if we leave things just to chance, frankly, we do that a lot. We don't come out of the womb knowing how to collaborate. We don't like come onto the planet knowing how to team. It's something we can learn. There's a skill set to it. And there are things we can do as administrators and leaders and managers and scientists and people on teams. There are things we can put in place by design that help with the effectiveness and outcomes of team science and collaboration. So I just want to share with you the 5 that I've been working with since the Safe Schools, Healthy Students initiative. Yeah, winging it is not a collaboration strategy, right? So these are the 5 that I've been using and testing and piloting and publishing about 25 years ago and still to this day. And I used it with the Schmidt Science Fellows Project and in my current projects. And I just wanted to share them with you and see what you think. So these 5 factors, I in shorthand, I say TTPPD. There are teams. They have to have enough frequency and duration of time to meet, to do their work. They have to have a purpose. That's the sine qua non of collaboration is shared purpose. No shared purpose, don't meet. There needs to be shared purpose. Teams engage in a cycle of inquiry. They engage in a process. Team science it's predicated on we talk, we decide, we do, we test, and we measure and evaluate how it went. And now we keep going. It's a cycle. And then diffusion, which sometimes gets left off, which is teams don't work in isolation either. They're connected to other teams and other groups, or should be, so that innovations can diffuse. And when we have these 5 factors in place, and as administrators, and I've been an associate dean, I've been a department chair in higher education, I'm always trying to always attend to these 5 things when I'm thinking about team science and when I'm thinking about teaming. And so I wanted to show you what happens when one or more of these are missing. So I know this is hard to see. You might have to blow it up. But here's how it's played out in my world and work, which is if you have all of these going on, and can you see my cursor? Okay, great. When you have these 5 going on, if you have teams, the right people of the right size, and they meet with the right frequency, and they have a purpose, and they're in a good process, and they diffuse, they're connected, you're going to get these widespread observable increases in scientific discovery, knowledge generation, right people doing the right work, so on. If you don't have teams, we get silos, isolation, competition, and individual agendas. If people aren't organized by teams. If they don't have enough time, people get very frustrated. They haven't had a chance to be together. They're too sporadically together. If they don't have purpose, a shared purpose, then that tends to breed confusion, invulnerability. Why are we here? What are we doing together? Tangential topics, off topics, people working hard on the wrong work. If there's no or poor process and not a cycle of inquiry, there's a lot of talk. They get together and we talk. We get together and we talk. And decisions are then based on hearsay and anecdotes, and we spread untested information through a system if there's not a really high quality process. And lastly, without diffusion, if a team is doing really intense, awesome work, that isn't going to go anywhere if there isn't a means for it to spread throughout a communication system. So, and then only informal methods are there. So all 5 of these need to be in place. And I understand that there could be 10 factors or 12 factors. These 5 to me are core. They have been core. They keep getting tested and used. And in my work and evaluation of science teaming and collaboration, these are the 5 that people tend to go, oh my gosh, I get it. Let's find money for these things. Let's measure these things. So I want to ask you now, which of these 5 factors seem to pose the biggest challenge in your world? If you could just put that in the chat. Which of the 5, here they are, and here they are. Which of the 5 seem to pose the biggest challenge for whatever reason. Time and process. Time and process. Process. Diffusion. Okay, there's some mix here. Shared purpose. Time and process. All of them. Yep. Yes, Jen. Yes, time that isn't taken over. Jenny. Undistracted time. Yes. Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. I will just say this. It has been my experience that sometimes in higher education, in K-12 education, in nonprofit world, scientific communities, we sometimes fund collaboration and say, go forth and go, but then we don't attend to these things. And then when they don't work, we defund them. Like an article came out recently about like women, people of color, it's bad for them, teaming's bad for them. Well, if you actually dig into that article and look at the stuff behind it, you realize there's no attention paid to these elements and these factors. And also the fact that there's been a decline in women and people of color going into academic tenured positions. They're going into industry and they're going into entrepreneurial worlds and making more money. That's a whole nother side comment. But what I'm saying is we fund teaming and we fund team science. Then when it, quote, doesn't work or we don't see outcomes, it's because we didn't attend to one or more of these factors. So I wanted to show you, I wanted to just say that for me, most often, and I think it's true in the chat, that the process, I'm going to see if I can share this article with you. Take this link, copy it, and put it in the chat for you. And hopefully you can access this article. This is just an example of an article. Let's see. Hopefully I can get around and show you things. And are you able to access it? I put a link in the chat. Yes. Okay, great. So this is just an example I just wanted to show you about process. TTPPD. Process. Because process is the one in my experience that does not get attended to the most. So, or it gets attended to the least. So in my world where I do work in pre-K-12 environments where educational systems are trying to set up teams, process is a concern. So all I wanted to show you here was one tool that exists right here. This is a rubric. It's been used for teachers, but in the world of evaluation, it's now been adapted for all teams. You can modify this. I want to encourage you to take it and use it. But this is a rubric that dives into the cycle of inquiry. So you see the word dialogue there? So there's slow down. Is somebody okay? Okay. There is a rubric here that dives into the elements of a cycle of inquiry. So I mentioned real briefly the cycle of inquiry. We talk, that's dialogue. We make decisions. We take actions based on them. And then we evaluate and measure and assess how those actions went in a cycle of team science. So this is just an example of one rubric that is used to measure and formatively assess the quality of dialogue, decision-making, action, and evaluation in a team. I'm just going to scroll through it. There it is, 4 sections. You are more than welcome. I'm going to go back up here and say right here, it's part of this right here. Measuring process. Because people get together and they say, collaborate. Go collaborate. What? What am I doing? What? I mean, I don't think I'm overstating that. Like, I really, people like intuitively, like I told you, Safe Schools, Healthy Students Initiative, seamless infrastructure of community-wide partnerships predicated on high-quality collaboration. They got $6 million to do this. What do? They're all coming from their own area of expertise, their own organizations, like what, how. So this process component is very helpful to people when you have a tool to show them what is possible. Now I just want to show you what data can look like. So this is just because I believe we can all relate to, we all came from school somewhere, but here is a one school system, one school. And this is all the people in a school. These are all the teams that are at work in the school. Some of these are multidisciplinary teams. Some of these are transdisciplinary teams. Some of these are unidisciplinary teams. And all I did in this one example is say, who are the people and what are the teams? Do an inventory. And I have another article that goes into the whole process of how you can do an inventory of teams in your project or your organization or your department, but inventory the teams. So TTPPD starts with, do you have teams? Who's on the team? This is just a very simple spreadsheet. So we can see there are like 35 teams. There are 42 people. This is how many people on each team and how many teams everybody's on. That's all that is, super basic. Here's another spreadsheet that I wanted to share with you. Here are those same teams, but now we have how many are teachers on the team. Now we have time, how frequently they meet and for how long. What is their purpose? Is it on instruction? And here is the scores that they got on that rubric I showed you. So this is one school. We now know about their teams, their time, their purpose, and their process. What's left? Diffusion. So here's a picture. I do a lot of social network analysis. So here is a picture of a teaming environment in a school, who's on the team, who's not on any team, and how it is possible for innovation to flow in a school environment. I did this with Schmidt Science Fellows too, but it's proprietary, so I'm not going to show it. I've done this with the CDC. It's proprietary. I'm not going to show it, but these same principles apply. Teams, how much time, what's the purpose, what's the process, how can innovation flow amongst the larger science community or into the community itself, into clinical practice. Okay, that's like a ton of info. So what I would like to do now, and I'm going to rely on the powerful people behind the sponsors of this, could we just go into groups of 4 or 5 people? And what I would like folks to do is, there's a lot of intel so far. If you could just share with each other what's hitting you or resonating for you right now in the head, which is like an intellectual thing, cognitive thing. I've learned a thing. This thing I've learned, it really resonates for me. Or something hitting you in the heart, like a gut feeling or an intuition, a feeling, or hands, some action you're imagining you want to take or you'd like to see someone else take. That's an action. So just in your groups, just share with each other what's resonating so far in the head, the heart, and or the hands. And we'll just spend 5-6 minutes there. And then we'll come back and go for questions and see what's stirred up. Okay, I thought we would just take a little bit of time to talk, have questions, ideas. I have more slides with more application of this. The next part of what I'm going to share after this is to show and to talk about how there's been a measure, how you can measure, let's call them process factors with team science or collaboration, and put it up against outcome measures and impact measures of team science, which is another part of this. So anyway, any questions or ideas or that anybody wants to ask right now? This is the same vibe I got with my Safe Schools Healthy Students group, where they're like, no, you're supposed to have the.
I can start us off with
All right, Jen, do it.
Just with a question I asked my small group. You had mentioned the paper that was talking about teams aren't good for women and people of color. And my breakout room folks also had seen some articles like that. And I was wondering if when you get a chance or someone else, if you could just put maybe the article you're referring to in the chat, I would love to read it and dissect it.
Yeah.
The way you did. I think that'd be extremely helpful. And I was saying we all had a variety of things that resonated with us with your model, whether it be that you took it a step forward and like talked about if one piece is missing, what would happen, like that was really helpful, or that it was quantifiable and they showed pictures and data in such a simple way that would be so impactful for organizations. And I think what was on my mind is just how challenging this is, it's really kind of mind-boggling how difficult it is to do these 5 things well in organizations, and how I think that's why I asked about the article, because I think it's like our structures are more often broken than the people are broken. And so, yeah, so I just, anyway, that's what was on my mind. There's a question for you and a comment. So hopefully it helps kick up.
It does. I think it goes to what I think Craig put in the chat, which is, at least in higher education, the context, the structural context, the systems of rewards, tenure, all of it do not celebrate, honor, support collaboration generally.
Mhm.
I mean, it's sort of what we all, or maybe want, or many people want to do, maybe, but if you're going to get tenure based on how many single authored, first authored publications you have, or grants you bring in as PI, not in partner, then those are barriers. I do have something to share about that, though, for the end of this presentation. But I think those people that are being trained in administration, which not a lot of faculty get trained when they go into administration, but higher education programs could do a lot more in preparing administrators to create conditions for collaboration and what that would look like, because there are places that have made some changes that have gone a long way. But are there any?
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other pressing questions, or I can jump back into the presentation.
I'll ask a question. My name is Mayla. I really enjoyed all your work, and I love thinking about evaluation. I'm curious, like, how long it takes you to gather all this data and how you actually really gather all of it in general, because it looks amazing, and I know it takes a lot of work.
Wow. Well, you'd think something as simple as, hey, what teams are you on? It would be sort of a simple question. But if I had all of us do that, which is an exercise we do when I go into any project or situation, I just say, okay, break out your iPhones and your calendar and just tell me what teams you're on, what meetings do you have? But the thing is, it might be that Mayla, Amalia, Christine, and I think I'm on a team with the 3 of you, but you're actually like, no, we just met a couple times. We're not actually on a team, So there is mass confusion just about the existence of an actual team that's supposed to be in a cycle of inquiry together. So it can take a while. On the other hand, if it's funded and it's a priority of leadership, it happens more quickly. If it's done from an external, sometimes it's faster if an external evaluator type person, researcher comes in because people feel like they've got to do it. Sometimes, other times it happens faster if it's an internal thing because the administrator wants it to be able to plan and to do. So it's hard to answer. It depends on the size, the scale of the project and undertaking, how many teams, how many people are involved. And it's going to, teams like rabbits seem to multiply. So over time, you've got to keep doing an inventory because things change. Teams are added, teams are disbanded as goals are reached, as outcomes are attained. So it's kind of iterative and kind of keeps going.
I wanted to jump in with something quickly that my discussion partner brought up, that it has to be personal, which makes me think about a lot about buy-in. And also there was a comment about context earlier from Craig, context and conditions. There are a lot of teams. There are 2 aspects that come to mind for me. One is when you have this hierarchical leadership where the decision is it's good for you. Like they're making decisions on behalf of someone else, or the team is because of something that's not personal, but it's because of, and it's an arm's length about who the decisions are impacting and whether people actually care or they're supposed to. And that brings in this idea of having it be personal, being really passionate about something and having buy-in is pretty critical in my book for having the team do well. But it also means when you bring in that passion, you're going to have more conflict because people are going to really care about how the decisions go, and there will be differences of opinion. So if you can make that leap over into something that you actually, the team's passionate about, now you better have that critical ability to deal with conflict. So
You brought up so much in that comment. First of all, professional disagreement, not conflict per se, but disagreement is really important for highly effective teams. We want disagreements because that's where innovation comes from. That's where new ideas and perspectives come from. If it's just all agreement all the time, that's a problem. So I just want to reiterate that point. I would also say that when bringing together a group of people, particularly from those who come from different disciplines, without the support of process, the use of protocols, the use of agendas, things can devolve because personalities take over and other things happen. So I believe that there are ways to create conditions for high quality collaboration where you don't have to rely as much on personality and passion. And that's what I would like to do, is not just have it be personality and passion, but that there are systems and structures that can enable collaboration to happen even among those who are less passionate or less skilled about it. So that's just what I'll say about that. Yes, Jenny?
Hi. I am totally loving all this whole discussion. I was just a quick question. When you say disagreements are where innovation happens, can you just like say two more sentences about that? Like, how is that?
Yes, let me do that. Particularly in unidisciplinary teams where everybody's coming kind of from the same place, and not just in science everywhere, but there is a tendency for groups when they get together. Daniel Goleman wrote about Thinking Fast and Slow. When we get together, we tend to go, good job. Yes, that's working. Yes, that's working. And we tend to like not want to engage in kind of a conflict, like, no, I actually really disagree with that. So what happens is we just confirm present practices, confirm present approaches when we're together, as opposed to taking that critical, no, I don't see it that way. I think it's this way. No, I don't see it this way. And that's the beauty of collaboration, is something different and comes out of it than just an individual. Because sometimes groups are actually just a mega individual. Groupthink, Megan, that's what I mean by that.
Thank you.
There's a term, it's not nice, but I'm going to say it, collaboration. I'm just going to say it. We want to get away from collaboration. People get together. We don't know what's the point there. We just symbolically are a team. We want it to be real. So, okay. I'm going to share my screen again, and then we can have more questions. Let's see. Are you seeing my screen?
No.
No. Okay. So let's do that. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. All right, let me go here. So this is where we were. And so Ellen asked for an example, and I wanted to share an example anyway of that's going on right now. I have been for 8 years funded through the National Science Foundation with my other co-PIs. A lot of money over a lot of time in a school district in Massachusetts, the second largest district in Massachusetts, in a computer science for all initiative, a research practitioner partnership, and many of you might be familiar with what these things are. But basically, we've got researchers, we've got content area experts, teachers, administrators, and here's this initiative, Computer Science for All, and the theory of change for the school district is essentially, if we work in teams, instructional innovation will happen, good things will happen for kids. I mean, that's just the most simple thing, the simple way to say it. And so in this district, my role has been to assess teams, time, purpose, process, and diffusion. Diffusion of computer science, instruction, and diffusion of equity and culturally responsive instruction, culturally responsive pedagogy, using Goldie Mohammed's Cultivating Genius, Cultivating Joy frameworks. So it's not just getting every kid equitable access to computer science because our Black and brown kids aren't getting it, girls aren't getting it. It's just certain strata of children are getting access to computer science. But it's also how we deliver computer science so that it is accessible and culturally relevant and responsive. So the innovations are both computer science and equity. And their theory is, if we do this in teams, multidisciplinary teams, we ought to be able to do this. So that's what the project is predicated on. So what I want to tell you is that we have measured and assessed teams, time, purpose, process, and diffusion over time, published many an article about it. And now currently we're looking at the relationships between teams, time, purpose, process, and diffusion, i.e. the quality of teams and impact, outcomes. And so where we've started is, and I just wanted to show you this one little tiny part of it, is in addition to getting information about teams, time, purpose, process, diffusion, we are now getting information from teachers, from administrators, and from our teacher evaluation system about the effects of collaboration on instructional innovation. So I just want to show you that it's pretty rare to have such an overwhelming support from teachers about teaming. If you look at the data out there, people think it can be a waste of time. I'd rather be planning, individual planning. But if we look at some of these questions, which is, I know that being part of this, they call it a PLC. That's a language issue. Their team. I know that being part of my team has strengthened my instructional practice. We're at 90% no. And then behind this, we have qualitative data with all their examples of how it's changed their instructional practice. And we have student learning data. And now we're tracking, and now we're doing correlations between quality of teams and learning of students. So I just wanted to show you that, because that is a question that comes up. How do we measure impact? Like, does collaboration matter? And I can tell you that, and you know this, it matters. I mean, it definitely matters. There's other ways to measure team science. There's scientific teams, the outputs of scientific teams. Are new conceptual frameworks generated? Are clinical findings translated into practice? And those can be measured. It's not just how many publications for individual researchers and various things, but absolutely those can be measured. Questions, comments about that before I move? I wanted to, and just feel free to jump in. I did want to make sure I mention this while we have some remaining time together. I don't know who is affiliated here, if anybody is, and please say so in the chat. If you're affiliated at all with the Schmidt Science Fellows program. Google is an investor in this. Eric Schmidt is an investor in this. There's a lot of money behind it, but this group are doing great things in the world that we all care about. And I just want to say that in November, next month, end of next month, they're having the first interdisciplinary science forum. And this is there are 5 strands. And I circled this one up in purple because I think that applies to most people in InterReach. But if you go online and Google the Interdisciplinary Science Forum and check it out one day, there's strands on demystifying interdisciplinary science research, models for structuring universities to foster interdisciplinary research, strategies for career paths, and reward systems that encourage interdisciplinary achievements, methods for measuring and rewarding it, and metrics for evaluating the extent to which an institution invests in team science. I will be there. These are great people. And I think there's probably overlap with Interreach, Insights, ACTS, CSTA, all of us. If anybody is interested in being there, I'll be there. Okay. We're toward the end, and I want to leave room for more questions and conversations. So questions, ahas, takeaways, implications, anything anybody wants to share or ask in this moment. Or questions about how you might apply it in your own context, any of this information in your own context. Yes, Christine.
Rebecca, thank you so much for this. It's awesome. I just really am taken with your ability to distill and confidently state the importance and the realness of these things, which a lot of us have been, working on finding our way to over the years. And if you had to kind of distill when you come into a team and you're like, this is why you're going to do, embark on this amount of energy on this intentionality. Do you have like this is kind of putting you on the spot. And so it doesn't have to be perfect, of course, but you just have this gift at making it obvious, like, hey, this is true. Now let's march forward. Like, what would you say is your opening
my
line?
Children and my husband, I have a gift for that. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes, this is recorded. We can show
thank you.
what happened in the wild. Yes. But how would you enter into a team, and like what would your lead in be to sort of entice people to direct their energies toward these types of things? I mean, I think you have made the value obvious in speaking the rubric language and other types of outcome language, but what's your what do you find is your best lead in, I guess, is my distilled question.
It would depend. First of all, it depends on the field. So I would want to know my literature in wherever I'm running around. So when I worked with the Association of State and Territorial Dental Directors, I got my ducks in a row about what they care about in dentistry and dentistry science, so that when I was giving examples of the impact of teaming, it was coming right into their field. When I work with nonprofits, I do it there. I work with a group right now called Embrace Race, and they're building the field of children's racial learning, and they're putting out resources, and we are doing an assessment of their capacity for collaboration. And what do I bring to them? I bring to them the data and information that comes from the world that they're trying to work in and operate in. So I would just say to have the language coming from your people, your people's language, or what your people care about. And there is no dearth of information about the power and value of collaboration in every field. There is no wicked problem that can be solved by independent actors working alone. I would also say sometimes in the world of team science, we get very into, and funders get very attached to the idea that they have to be transdisciplinary teams or they have to be multidisciplinary teams. Frankly, a very high functioning unidisciplinary team is really important. Sometimes you need all the biologists together to get these findings so we can figure out what's happening. And so I don't want to ever go into an environment and go, well, you ought to be this kind of team working on this. Like, what makes sense for the purpose of the work that's trying to be accomplished? So lead with humility about where are they? What are they trying to do? And no one really argues with teaming. But if we try to impose a certain type of teaming in a certain type of way for a certain type of purpose, that's a problem. And I think sometimes those of us in this work do that. I know the CDC in most of their funding initiatives in HIV, tobacco prevention, their RFPs are like, we're going to fund initiatives that increase the number of partnerships. Well, you know what? Maybe you don't need to increase partnerships. You need to improve the quality of the pre-existing ones. So I do have an article. It's 2012. It's called Evaluating evaluating and improving organizational collaboration. And it's a framework for how you start to engage in the work. And the first stage of it is to raise literacy about teaming. And there's ways to do that and so on and so forth. And I can give you the link to it, or you could Google it, you would find it. Woodland and Hutton, 2012, evaluating and improving organizational collaboration. Great question, though. Are there other questions?
So Rebecca, there was a question in the chat from Steve about whether the Interdisciplinary Science Forum is building upon the foundation of work that's been done by, for example, Julie Thompson-Klein and others, or whether they're kind of going it on their own and potentially reinventing the wheel. But we're at 1 o'clock. So
Okay, I'm going to give a quick answer.
okay.
Steve, my fear is that they're reinventing the wheel. My fear is that they are not grounded in the field. And I really would like everybody from Insights and this group to show up and be asking those questions when we're there. But that is the issue with team science, though. I mean, there's probably 17 organizations that are involved somehow in all of this, and we don't all necessarily talk to each other or are aware. So I think there's an opportunity here. And I certainly, the executive director of Schmidt Science Fellows and I are friends, and I'm talking with her, Megan Kenna, about, hey, you know, there's a whole discipline here. There's a whole field. So, all right, in wrap up, let me share. I just want to say this. I want to say thank you to Interreach with 1R. You rock. People, anybody here, reach out anytime. Consider going to that forum on the 21st. And if, you know, Insights, I hope to see you next year in Maryland if you're not a member, or if you are a member. And it's just a quote, just ending with a quote. We can't do anything alone, or Michael Jordan. And that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rebecca, so much for taking this time to come and speak to all of us. This was a really enjoyable and informative hour that we've had with you. And to everyone who hung in there with us through the end here, thank you so much for hanging out, and we'll see you again in November. Please go to our website, interreach.com, to get more information about our upcoming talks over the next couple of months. And enjoy the rest of your week, everyone, and we'll see you next month.